I had lived in China when I was 16. It was the first time I lived there. It was 1996. China was very, very different, obviously, than it is now. I was living in Beijing with a homestay family. And over the course of the next about 10 years, I grew in terms of, our relationship grew. And I felt like there was an interesting story there in terms of what I had inherited from them and their history and, the stories that they shared with me and what it meant that I was an American woman living with them and the history, obviously the complicated U.S.-China history, if you think just politically, culturally, and then that yet, despite that, they were very comfortable with inviting me into their home and calling me a child of theirs, really, calling me their daughter. And I thought that was just a really interesting premise to look at that, the intimacy of that personal relationship compared with what, has happened between the U.S. and China in the past few centuries. And so that was the initial kind of impetus, to write the book. I felt like there were two pieces in my own personal history that were really important to supporting me as a writer and to kind of giving me permission to write. I think a lot of people feel like, well, can I do this? How much can I commit to this? How do I commit to this? And there were two things. The first was that I was awarded a Fulbright fellowship to return to China to research what became this novel. And it was the first time I had ever shown anyone my writing at all, my creative work. So kind of having a committee of people that, I thought might know what constitutes good writing, read my application and approve it was the first step of saying, oh, maybe I can do this. That was the first step. So I think, just putting your work out there to start is so important. And then from there, I would say the second piece of it was I came back to the U.S. I had no formal training in writing. Again, I wasn't an English lit major. I wasn't a creative writing major. I had never taken creative writing classes of any sort. I enrolled in an evening program at UCLA's Extension School. And so there are lots of programs like that exist around the country. And it was sort of having the formality of every week having to turn in a certain amount of work to a professor who was a published author. Really sort of, again, helped me to understand what it meant to be a writer and have that consistency and that discipline. And then from there, then I kind of had the initial shape of the novel and felt like, okay, now I need to continue working on this. And really what that meant at that point was, setting goals and deadlines that I might not always meet, but were there for me in terms of what sort of research I wanted to do, what books I knew I needed to read, what primary sources I needed to find, who I needed to interview, kind of piecing all of that together, and then just sitting down, almost at least every weekday, not on the weekends, and really doing the work, in addition to then, having other jobs and all of that. But you have to show up